Hello. After a couple of weeks of trying it on stream, I finally finished ending 3 off stream. Like usual, I went with Spearhead squad. I like Spearhead a lot, because if I combine it with Pinecone and Spot, it allows me to consistently beat any floor 1 stage, no matter what the emergency is. This means I can consistently get to a good place in the second floor with a bunch of fights. The main thing with playing with 4 stars in IS is that I'll never have one operator that can carry the whole game like you would with 6 stars. I absolutely need a massive squad to get through, especially later stages. The later it gets, the more operators I need. So it's not even about items, I just want to get as many recruits as humanly possible. So my priority in the early game is to just get as many fights as I can, especially before the 3rd floor, because for me the 3rd floor is the hardest part of the run. By the 4th floor I should have a big squad and items, 5th floor I mostly try to skip the fights. On the 3rd floor I want to take all of the fights if I can, but the fights can be extremely deadly. Spearhead sounds like a late game option. You start with less lives, but in return you have permanently increased stats. It's the opposite for me. I'm using it for the early game. It's actually bad for me later in the game because there's options that outscale it, like just starting with more ingots so you can get more items. E2 in click is less than ideal, and normally I end up clicking one enemy here. My normal strategy in this stage is to pull the sword away first, so I can Q it, and that way Spot can out-heal the 2 enemies. That's not really viable with an E2 click. I know I can Q everything else, so I'll try to just rely on click S2, since the ranged enemy is first, and see if I can get enough stuns. Luckily I did, so no leaks for me. Lucky start there. And we get another dodge item. Kind of useless for the first 2 items we got, but we'll take what we can get. We get really lucky here and get the scout rune. That allows us to summon the node we need for ending 3, and we can guarantee we get it on the 4th floor. I'll explain why later, but we ideally always want to take the scout node on the 4th floor specifically. And finally the prison stage. Pinecone can actually solo this stage, so we just win. We instantly to Ethan. He's the closest thing to a carry operator I have. He's just good on every single stage. We get a great chop with spinach and the pinecone, extra lives, hope and deploy limit, and hope and some ingots. Nothing too interesting, but good enough. That allows us to recruit a bunch of operators, and as I said, we need a massive squad to fight. We get the Black Horn and the E2 plus ingots. One of the best starts I've seen. Spinach plus Horn is amazing for the first chop. So I decide to get as many ingots out as possible, to abuse this as much as I can. So since we have the spinach, E2 Pinecone is a natural choice. And then we get a medic. It is possible to fight on floor 2 without a medic, but it's unreliable. Perfumer makes the floor much more consistent. The only worry now is the emergency ghosts fight, because we might be forced to leak a ghost there. Not a good floor, because we only have a few fights. Ideally I want to get something like 4 or 5 fights here. So my main priority now is to look for where the boss key is. We start with the normal sluggy stage. Because we have Perfumer, we set up a bit farther back than usual. Normally I prefer Spot on the central tile, but I can't reach him there with an AoE medic, so this is much safer. Only Spot gets hit by the explosions because of how spiders path, and the caster damage gets diverted onto other operators. So Perfumer gets the benefit of healing multiple operators. We luck out and get some devices, and another caster. We go for Indigo because she benefits a lot from the spinach. And we luck into a boss key, plus a scout node and a wish. I always go for the boss key. We get lower deployment limit, but it's fine. We have a deployment item. I think for a bit if I want low altitude, which I can definitely beat easily, or go for the emergency. I need a lot of power to win, so I decide to be greedy and go for the emergency shadows. I will definitely leak at least one enemy. If I get really lucky, it's possible to do it without a leak, since I have an E2 Ethan, and he cheeses the ghosts really badly. The actual problem I have is that Spot can't tank. He will just die to the normal enemies in emergency. So I can't really have him deployed for too long. For most of the time I will just use Pinecone. I think Perfumer was a mistake here. I'm using Click to disable one of the ghosts early basically. I think what I should have done was just use Myrtle and Spot to tank for Pinecone later. By diverting fire away from her. Instead of deploying Click here. I think Click was a mistake. The first ghost managed to leak through because we ended up using a lot of items once. Not sure if I had a consistent way to do it better. We got a dog as well at the end. It's very unlikely that we'll be able to kill it, but we can rely on item binds and click stuns to try. We activate all of the skills early. And we just barely get the kill. We lucked out there. We get a debuff that increases the prices of items in shops. 20 DP and melee attack. Melee attack is less than ideal usually, because I mostly rely on my ranged operators. But Ethan is carrying me a lot here, he's pretty good for that. I will take the Sing Rune of course, for the attack speed. This will be very funny later, you'll see why. We go straight for the E2 caster. And reroll. I won't be able to make much use of my ingots later, so I was considering robbing the shop. I can't do it easily enough, but I decided the items aren't worth it. I still need more deploy limit and squad limit stuff. So I just got the operators and got out of there. And we got the best note here possible for extra devices. We end up with 4 devices, another from the scout node, and then we get 2 items. Pretty great second floor overall. E2 Ink Bubble, because removing Perfumer might not be safe, plus E2 Bubble is way better. If I have her at E2 I don't have to rely on Perfumer healing at all. We got the item buff item, so he does 1000 DPS when he binds. Excellent item for him. That makes him by far my best operator. And we do the sluggy stage again. I've already done it, so I'll just skip past it. It's the same thing. Luckily we get to E2 Perfumer as well. So we're set to fight every stage on the 3rd floor now. We get a squad limit or 15% physical damage. I'll take the damage at this point, there's many squad limit items. But 15% physical helps both Pinecone and Ethan, and they're my main carries. I need the squad limit later, but physical damage helps now. I don't really want to take the scout node here, because I can find one later. We get the golden chalice. And we see the boss key. So I'm wondering if I want to take 3 fights or the boss key, but seeing how I can get more fights after the boss key. We take the scout node, use it to E2 an operator with the boss key. There's nothing to E2, so we just use it for the ingots, it's fine. We get one of the nastiest conditions for me, where enemies move slower, but they have increased defense and res. This isn't always a big deal, depending on what operators you have, but it's a bit annoying for 4 stars. Naturally, we head straight into the emergency. I do make a mistake here, where I commit both my physical damage operators on the right lane. This is simply overkill. And it will make me struggle with the casters, since they have such high res and I don't have haze. A better setup would have been to have Pinecone face on the left side, and then have both Click and Indigo help on the right side. Because the enemies on the left have low defense and high res, the enemies on the right have low defense and low res. So casters really struggle with the left side, they would give me more value on the right. This looks like it's going to be fine, but it ends up costing me, since Click can't quite finish that caster off. I end up clicking one caster, and the bear will die despite its extra stats. Ethan just stows it too much. He has a bit of extra attack speed from the chalice. Indigo can bind, it's too much for the bear. With all of the extra stats it still goes down. So 2 items for us, but some extra collapse value. A device, 2 more devices. Oh, my mistake, this wasn't even an emergency fight. I just leaked the normal one. I was just heading for the shop. Looking through the shop, there's nothing I really want here. We just get the sniper, pick up a totter. A reroll, and now we have a thought. We have 2 deploy limit, 1 squad limit, sniper attack, specialists. There's a bunch of stuff here. The shop is going to get more expensive later, because of the debuff I have. So I think for a bit and decide the best thing I can do here is to just drop the shop right now. The items in it don't look impressive, but they give me things I really need, namely more operators in my squad. Because I'm going to have a ton of E2 operators of roughly the same power, the extra squad slots are worth way more to me than they otherwise would be. I have a thought about how to best rob the shop. I don't think I should struggle with it much because I have Ethan. I make a mistake here, kind of a stupid one. Totter should be on the central tile because that's where he'll be able to hit the stealthy enemy. The top lane spawns the tanky enemy, the bottom lane spawns the stealth enemy. I kind of just forgot and messed up. It happens. We have Click Q of the flamethrowers early and stall out the fireball guys for a bit. I don't really need to kill them on the top, just delay them a bit until all of the trash mobs on the bottom die. Because the stealthy guy has the buff, he instantly deletes my defender, so we leak 2 guys through. It's not a big loss at this point. I'm eating debuffs like crazy. The fireball casters took about 2 minutes to walk down, so we skipped a bit forward. I decided I have no particular use for Prudenko, but I needed more blockers, so we went with Roberto. We pick the hope item first, then the recruits. Sniper attack, deployment limit, extra defense. Guard health is okay, not a big deal. SP and medic is also okay. I was mostly interested in the squad improvements. We pick up Jaya. With all the buffs we can accrue, he can be pretty useful, as long as we have enough DP to support him. And finally we get the worst note, a downtime. I try my luck, and I really luck out here with an item. 2 extra squad size limit for me. If I roll any more I'll start losing lives, so I decide against that. A pretty good boss key for me. There's no more shop, but I have the chalice to give me value from my ingots. Now I'm considering what to do. I have a lot of devices, so I want to use every path I can, so Shady Frozen Sea makes more sense. But that's an extremely dangerous stage, so I'm just a bit hesitant to walk into it. Enemies have extra stats and massively improved movement speed. I decide to take it anyway. The way it works for 4 stars is that I don't get to play safe. I need to take risks, otherwise I'll just lose from not having enough stuff to fight later. And I decided this fight is an acceptable risk. With 2 E2 casters it should be manageable. I get an unfortunate item bind there that kills Click. But that's fine. Ethan can carry us because he has 1000 arts DPS. We can rely on him to be our arts caster for a bit. While Click comes back. And Pinecone is used to kill the next two bombs and the caster. Once the bombs is out of the way, we can set up Perfumer and Bubble. But for now we add a bit more damage to the left side to make sure we don't leak. Thanks to the spinach, Pinecone kills them quickly. And Bubble will block everything there, so you don't have to deal with the bombs or casters anymore. That leaves only the bottom lane, which is Ethan, Click and Indigo's job. There's a couple more waves of it, one with 2 stun guys and one with 3 stun guys. We just need to not use the over skills together. Ethan and Indigo should be used one after the other. Their skills are overkill if they overlap, especially with the extra attack speed. With Bubble easily tanking the casters and the bombs, Pinecone gets to shoot them all for free. A bit nervous because the enemies in this stage are a pest, but we should be safe by now. There's only 3 defenders and a few trash mobs coming from the top. They're normally really annoying, but Ethan destroys them. So the moment they're in range, they all melt. A few reach Roberta, but there's not enough damage to kill her. And we get through the most annoying stage in SURTR. In my opinion, this stage is harder than the actual boss stages. If you can beat it, you're set. We get 20% extra arts damage, not bad, helps the casters. And we E2 Pure Stream. 2 E2 medics is really helpful for the first boss fight. We take the combat node, since we don't have anything to use on non-combat nodes. And we take Outer of Craving as well. It's not much value, but I have 6 devices, so I have no reason not to. I likely won't be able to use 6 devices by the end of the run anyway. With all the extra stuff we have, this is an easy win. Deploy Bubble, deploy Ethan, deploy Ranged. Jaya is still at E1, so he sets up a bit slowly, but once he's up, they can't really kill him. We have extra physical damage, so he heals for more than usual. And he takes care of all of the casters himself from here on. No the Corbett, but that's fine. We get an E to Roberta, might as well. She's extremely useful later, because enemies do so much damage. Blocking a couple of hits can double the lifespan of some of my operators. Finally we go into the most irritating boss fight in the 3rd floor, but still easier than the shady shithole one. Basically the boss just does a massive amount of damage. So we want to kill him as quickly as possible. If he starts walking around, you're kind of screwed usually. We have Roberta side lane to take care of the 3 bears that go there. I check if Jaya can kill the harpoons on his own. Seems not. If he was deployed on the top, he would die to drones before he killed it anyway. That's no problem. We have 1 harpoon down, thanks to SURTR. And he gets to shoot a couple of drones, so they aren't being pests later. Meanwhile, Ethan and Pinecone are set for the spawn camp. As I said earlier, we just want to kill him as quickly as possible, so we don't have to deal with the boss's bullshit. By the way, the item Ethan has is an insane amount of damage for me. 1000 DPS is about as much as Click does normally. Obviously click does a bit more in IS, but still. That's a massive DPS increase on an operator that already does a fairly high amount of damage, by my standards. Jaya is there to face tank a bit. Spam Pink on this one for the spinach. We get the lucky dodge. I kinda forgot I had Roberta devices here. I also should have deployed Perfumer faster to keep Pinecone alive, but we have most of Ethan's Q left, and I remember that I have Roberta devices. If Ethan misses a bind, he will attack Myrtle instead, which again protects Ethan. Through the device spam and the binds, Ethan finishes him off. All that's left is a few bears and the harpoons. Easy cleanup from here. %35% physical damage. We already have 15% physical damage, and they stack. I take the warrior node to apply as many combat buffs on the bosses later, and we E2 Totter. E1 to E2 difference in Totter is massive, so there wasn't any other choice there. He'll be our main DPS for the boss later. The shop is useless, so it's an ideal place to make a scout node. I could just take the scout node at the bottom as well and preserve my own to skip a fight on the 5th floor, but I decide to use it here to get more fights on the 4th floor. If I go on the bottom, the path is less ideal. This fight is always free on the 4th floor, because you have way more stuff than you normally would for it. If you get it on the start of the 3rd floor, you're kind of dead, but here it's safe. Especially with Ethan. Ethan just destroys this fight. Roberta is also a massive cheeser for it, because the devices completely block the attacks, and these guys attack slowly. We delay Ethan's Q a bit, so it matches up with the waves of these 4 assholes. And once they're all here, Ethan gets to melting them. A normally annoying fight, made very easy by Ethan. Even without the 1000 DPS item, he still kind of trivializes this fight, because he keeps enemies in place for my other operators to kill. But with it he basically solves the fight. Especially if you have an SP device or something. I assume if I get this fight on the 6th floor, these guys would be able to one-shot Bubble, but they're a bit wimpier on the 4th floor, so she can still tank them. We got a really lucky drop here and got the final physical damage item, for a total of 75% bonus physical damage on our operators. This makes Cutter an instant pick because she basically does double damage now. And we have the horn and the spinach, which also benefits her. And the guard book makes her die in 3 hits instead of 2. Extremely useful, I know. Next, naturally we go into the boss key. We want to do the boss key before we get the ending 3 debuff. Increased max life points, but we only have 1 fight here. Obviously we do the emergency fight, since there is no debuff from the boss key. I think for a bit. At this point I'm getting fairly nervous, because I'm having a really good run and don't want to die in a stupid way. I decide to take Cutter S2 for the drone. And we have Perfumer to help block everything. Click kills the drone very slowly, but once Cutter S2 charges, she deletes it completely. And then we just set up every operator, point into the top red box, and then we win. Have I mentioned that I dislike this stage a lot? Because I do. Enemies spawn one by one, then they die. Repeat for about 3 minutes. Extra SP, not a great item, but helps Pinecone and Totter, so that's something. Of course, we E2 Jaya. And we get the shop here. Other one is useless, and we can use the shop to potentially dispel some fight that I don't want to do. Extra stun chance isn't that useful to me, especially with extra attack speed, so I prefer to take the healing and all my operators. It's a decent counter to injury trigger. We have a bunch of emergencies later that we are definitely equipped to fight, so we want to use the scout note here. We replace the shop. Now, there is a reason why I want to take the scout note on the 4th floor in particular. When you take the ending 3 item, the floor after that will spawn a prophecy that you need to walk into to get the ending 3 item. That prophecy always spawns on the bottom path of the map, and there is no alternative path, there's no side paths. So on the floor that you get the prophecy, you get very few fights, because you can only go one horizontal path, no vertical movement at all. That's why I want to do it to get that prophecy on the 5th floor, because I don't want to do any fights on the 5th floor to begin with. If I get it on any other floor, I'm missing out on the fights from 2 floors. This way, I'm only missing out on the fight from the 5th floor, which I want to avoid anyway. That's just the highest value I can get. This fight is fairly simple. We just have entirely 2 strong operators at this point. We have a bunch of attack speed, physical damage. We almost leak defenders because we forget about them and don't press it on S2, but Jaya stabs them to death. Emergency fight, but very easy. We get even more squad limit, lucky me. I have both of the specialists that actually do something, so every other specialist is completely worthless to me. And we get more objective shield. Thinking if I want 2 fights or 3 fights. And if I can use the objective shields, I decided I can't get value out of them, because they'll spawn too randomly. I'll use them later, so I just go and do the restricted zone emergency. This is the one with the drones. The ending 3 debuff makes an extra drone spawn, but it's not a big deal. Totter obliterates the invisible guys. And you can see that every physical attack is a red buff now, because of all the items they have. Pinecone goes in the shadow tile, because most of her damage is unaffected by something reducing her attack speed. When we have enough damage to kill all the drones early, this stage becomes extremely trivial. We almost managed to leak because we let Cutter die to the drone, but after that we're fine. Finally, there's a bear coming through, and the bear has no chance. Ethan exists, and it will never make it through. Even if it does, Roberta plus Bavu can tank it for a while. More deployment limit and more SP generation. Pretty good all around. And we finally get to E2 Cutter. This is a massive DPS increase because her skills charge much faster and she does way more damage. We finally take the defense stage as well. Not much value to be gained from it at this point, but I have too many devices, so there's no reason not to. I don't have a choice of what path to take on the 5th floor, because I don't need to get the prophecy there. So I don't even need devices for vision. We have so much physical damage that Jai can 1v1 every single enemy on this stage, except the Devourer, of course. You can see Totter doing thousands of damage every hit, even without his Q. We get Pudenko, she can be good on some stages later. Checking if there's anything I can do with my runes, but sadly not. End of times lets me skip a fight, or the key lowers 2 co-ops value. I decided that 2 co-ops value isn't a big deal, so I went with end of times. We got the DP debuff and the annoying shadows. Next debuff is 40% DP. We get that debuff from the prophecy, so we will 100% get the 40% DP debuff. Not ideal for the later fights in this run. For once I take the objective shields here, because I already have enough devices and there's nothing to use them on. We have an emergency fight before the prophecy, it's musical disaster. I think about it for a bit, but there's no reason to use any runes here. I can just beat it straight up. We leave Gravo, so we can use her to manipulate the laser. And switch to Cutter 1. The main gimmick is that the violin guys are in the back. Sadly, the only tile where I can hit them safely from, without interrupting the laser, has a black smoke on it. Cutter just barely kills the first golem. I decide to use that tile anyway. Totter does enough damage, and he gains attack speed from the skill. It's not ideal, but we work with what we have. I do make a mistake here though. I should have deployed Pinecone to kill the bottom 2 golems that Totter is hitting. Even in the smoke tile, she'll kill them quickly. If we got rid of them, then Totter would have done way more damage to the violins in the back. This will cause me some problems later. I instead went with Intrigu and much later. There's also one more mistake. I should have used Pure Stream in Perfumer's position, simply because she heals more on single target, and we only had to deal with single target damage for the most part. The violins almost one-shot Jaya, so we're forced to use a device to make him charge up. Not ideal, but he is capable of 1v1ing a violin once he's charged. We retreat Jaya because he'll die if the violins start walking towards him. So we use Jaya for now. I mean Gravo. This is all a side effect from not using Pinecone to kill those 2 golems. That prevented Totter from killing all of the violins himself. All of the caster starts moving, so it's a problem if the chain gets interrupted now. I should have used the device and Jaya here as well. If I did that, I wouldn't have leaked anything. I wasn't paying attention to the back. I could have protected Jaya with a model device to avoid the one-shot. Then he would have killed one caster, and everything would have went smoothly. Instead, the chain breaks down, and I get exploded by the ranged casters. Thankfully for me, Ethan is fairly unkillable, so he's able to deal with most of the enemies. I get really lucky here, with a bunch of binds and Ethan dodges, so I don't end up licking any more enemies. Once the caster is down, there's simply not enough damage to kill anything. Pure Stream will kill. And we block the final golem with Bubble. We do have an objective shield, so we don't gain any co-ops. Though at this point we have the most annoying buff in the game, so getting extra co-ops is hardly a big deal. We distract with Gravo outside of the laser, so Pure Stream doesn't get hit too. And once the caster is in range and uses the attack on Gravo, we deploy Jaya. He charges up and kills the violinist. The golem is all that's left. And that's an easy kill, because he can't kill Bubble. I played it very swappily, but luckily I didn't take any critical damage. Vanguard and Guard attack just means some extra attack on Cutter, less than ideal. I decide to get Umbrio, hopefully I can E2 her and she can help me control the map later. And for the final rune, Hope is worthless, so obviously we take Objective Shield. I have too many runes and I'm wondering what to do with them all the time. I decide to apply Objective Shield twice, using a combat rune. And then we get the worst debuff possible, minus 40% DP. I can't afford to spend my good combat rune on the boss fight. I'll absolutely need it for the third ending. After getting past the normal mode, I think I'll do fine on this stage. I beat the musical emergency, this is normal, I should be fine. But we have minus 40% DP and those guys do a lot of damage. I think about what I actually want to do. I decide to deploy my tankiest operator, namely Bubble. And then we use Giant to absorb the one shot. We deploy a medic to heal. But the guy does a bit too much damage to Bubble, and she dies anyway. This is looking kind of bad, so I decide it's time to use End of Times. We quit out of the stage. And since we have End of Times, that simply takes us back to the map. It's useful to remember that you can use End of Times like this, you don't have to wait for the stage to kill you. We can't afford to use any other runes, so we go straight for the boss. I decided to use a combat rune to give myself 2 more Objective Shield. This ended up being a mistake. I should have considered that I get a guaranteed rune from the boss, with 3 possible options, so I could have gotten another good rune for the ending 3 boss there. Not considering that came to bite me in the ass later. We have a ton of items this run. Healing, physical damage, charge damage, attack speed, hope, bleed, horn, spinach. A lot of items were required to make this run work, especially the starting DP. The starting DP is a godsend that counters the minus 40% DP, because it actually lets me deploy my operators regardless. We drop Myrtle to start giving us DP, Pinecone to kill the center. You may have seen this setup on my stream before. I think for a bit if I want her on the left side instead, but I decide I'll have enough damage regardless. And I just need to open up the tiles as quickly as possible. And Bubble is sent to tank until Perfumer can go and heal her. Pinecone is retreated. We have a bunch of Dominion tiles, but that's fine. We can just deploy around them. They won't hurt us. Click doesn't get one shot, so we can have her tank the ice spikes just fine. Now I should have deployed something in front of Bubble here to avoid the leak, because the boss uses his skill around this point. But as is tradition, I leak one bear in this fight. Once all of the ice tiles are dead, SURTR will demolish the boss, since he gets his single target damage buff. And now our goal is to open a tile on which we can deploy Cutter. As soon as we have an open tile, we deploy Cutter, but it was a Dominion tile and I didn't notice. That's going to be a problem for me, so I decide to retreat Cutter. We deploy Pure Stream to help Ethan on the right side. And we drop Indigo in the only tile that's not bad for her. There's no icebox for her to hit, and it's not in a Dominion tile. Roberta is used to tank. And now we wait a bit. We'll deploy Ethan later because we want to generate as much DP as possible. Click and Indigo can deal with most of the waves of basic enemies on the left. and Ethan can essentially solo the right side. Double physical damage, extra arts damage, and the 1000 arts DPS. It's way too much power with the extra attack speed and he easily solos that side. He just needs Pure Stream to keep him alive. Totter starts demolishing the boss with 6000 damage per hit. And Cutter is finally back up. No Dominion tile now, so she can start working on the boss herself. She does 20,000 damage per S1. That Jaya deploy was a bit bad, because he can't heal Pure Stream, so he might end up getting her killed. I should have deployed him above click. He could safely divert fire from other operators there, or maybe not even deployed him at all. The boss stuns, so he stops attacking, and at this point he is already dead. With the boss down, all that's left is to clean up the enemies. There's no constant healing check from the boss, no stuns, so it's a quick cleanup from here. Now the luckiest moment in this run. The collectible that I got changed everything. We got the Weaves of Thorns and Leaves, which makes 9 operators invisible. This completely cheeses the ending 3 fight to a massive degree. I wonder for a second about the bow instead, but decided the boss will just one-shot everything, since he does about 3000 damage per hit on difficulty 15. If I didn't have this item, I likely would have failed the fight. Maybe I could have won it, because I have the max health increase to avoid one-shots, but it would have been far harder. Naturally, there is nothing in the shop, since we already robbed it, and we go for the safe house. I was hoping to E2 Umbreal here, but no such luck. We got some extra lives instead. Now, I've never actually played Frost and Sand before, so I have no idea what this stage is, so I was very worried here. I also couldn't apply any buffs to it, because of the runes I had. I needed them for the boss. Wondered for a second if I could do anything, but there was no way out. I had to do the emergency of this stage blind. Luckily for me, this stage is actually incredibly easy. You basically have 2 lanes at the bottom, where you only get melee enemies, so Ethan wins. And then you have the left box spawns casters. So the entire stage is just deploy range DPS on the bottom, on these tiles here, and then have something kill the casters on the top left. The right top box doesn't do anything, it just feeds more enemies into the center. The red possessed probably has 100,000 health at this point, but it hardly matters. I'm just delaying the Jaya deploy as much as possible, because I want to get as many other operators out as possible. Myrtle provides more DP than I lose. Jaya costs me less than 0.5 DP, and Myrtle provides 0.5 DP, even without any SP items. So I can still generate DP even through the 40% DP debuff. With the constant binds from Ethan, we take care of most of the enemies. We ended up leaking one bully because we weren't expecting them earlier in the fight, but it's of no concern. We have plenty of lives to work with. A great item, minus 15% health affects everything, even the boss. We don't pick up any operator, because it doesn't matter. None of these runes matter, so we're heading for the boss fight. I was thinking here for a bit if I want to use the attack speed or the max health. The max health is better if I get bad camouflage tiles, The attack speed is better for insta-killing the boss. I don't have any other max health, so without the max health rune, the boss will one-shot any ranged operator. So I decided it's safer to use it, even though I have the camouflage tiles, in case they want in a bad spot. The shield guard is of no help at all, he just dies to a few hits from the boss. We decide to bring Gabriel and Fang. Fang is there for the extra 8% attack and cutter from the guard book. At this point there is nothing for Roberto to do. And we start the fight. Since we've been trying to do ending 3 on difficulty 15, this is the first time I've made it to this fight. It was a long journey. The camouflage tiles were perfect. This is the best possible place they could have been on. We can set up SURTR, Pinecone on tiles without Dominion on them. Cutter can DPS there and they're all safe. The moment I saw where the camouflage tiles were, I knew we were set to kill the boss easily. Now I just needed to not leak any of the other 105 enemies on the stage. Even at T1, with all the items we have, Imbril does a massive amount of damage, and she will help carry the fight. We're set up, and we're just waiting for the boss to come. The column in the middle has 2 charge levels. One makes it vulnerable for 5 seconds, 2 charge levels makes it vulnerable for 10 seconds. The 10-second one is generally better, because it dispels some of the pink tiles. I'm wondering if I can use my medics to give Cutter some extra damage from the Black Horn. Once the column turns red, we use the Power Over skills, and you can see Pinecone doing 10,000 damage per hit, just melting the boss. We try to use Click, but the boss does a ton of damage. Kills Pure Stream, and now it's no longer vulnerable. We couldn't kill it in one cycle. That's less than ideal, considering how dangerous this boss is. But we do have a safe spot that we can work with while the boss is there. This is why Camouflage cheeses this fight so hard. The boss simply cannot attack our DPS operators while they're hiding over there. Without the constant pressure from the boss, most of the stage becomes much easier. Especially with a global damage operator like Umbriel. I want to point out that the boss is almost one-shotting my operators with 50% extra health, and with Spearhead for 15% extra health, and with the extra health from the passive buffs you get. First phase is done, we use our 3 operators to deal with random trash mobs. We only have 32 lives to work with after all. The boss now has 4500 attack. If something is in a pink tile, he will hit for 9000 damage. So surviving without the camouflage at this point isn't a realistic option for me. Even my defenders don't have that much stats. So we're just cowering away in the camouflage, waiting for the boss to come closer. We drop all over damage, but now there's a bunch of planes in the way that kind of interfere with SURTR. Pinecone and Cutter still get most of their damage down though, and Ethan is here to help. We get about half of the health of the boss. That's enough, we should be able to finish it in the next ride through. We do the same thing as last time but with different operators. Click, Perfumer, Bubble, catch some random trash mobs. And the top spawn is covered by SURTR and Ethan for the most part, so those aren't a threat. the boss starts insta-killing all of my operators on the bottom side. As you can see, that's completely untankable. I don't have the tools to deal with it directly. We really lucked out on the camouflage. Maybe I could have won without it even, but I would have definitely leaked way more. Finally, we have a chance to kill the boss. All of our operators can hit him. We have 10 seconds to finish it. And with the little health he had left, he just melts. Before we can even use Cutters one twice. All that's left now is a few enemies. The runners and the harpoons go straight into Ethan, who's invincible, and they have no way to counter him. Totter destroys everything on the left, and Ambrio is setting up to deal with the enemies coming from the right. At this point, there is not enough enemies on the stage to finish it up. Even if we leak every other enemy, we'll still win. That was a really long and hard run for me. I got really nervous, especially towards the end. It just goes to show how many different things I need to actually fight this fight properly. I don't really feel too frustrated playing IS4 though, so probably do a few more attempts. You know, like a few hundred more attempts to beat it on stream as well. This is probably overkill for what I actually need to do this fight. And I'll be interested to optimize it more and see how far I can push it. I'm really not sure how I would fight here without the camouflage though. I feel like the boss would just explode everything. I think the best idea would be Moose plus Roberta, using devices to block one shot on defenders, and Moose to debuff it while I'm dealing with him and he's among all of my operators. As a bonus, Moose's own damage isn't all that low either. GG.